The diplomatic cruiser, Unity's Hope, drifted through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant glow of a dying star. Ambassador Everett Cole stood in the main observation deck, his gaze fixed on the growing silhouette of Zephyr Prime, the capital world of the sovereign hegemony. It loomed like an obsidian monolith, its vast urban sprawl woven with rivers of molten metal and towering spires of black alloy. He adjusted his ceremonial sash, a deep blue symbol of the United Terran Federation's pursuit of peace. The mission was simple in theory: extend an olive branch to the hegemony, seek a diplomatic path forward, but in reality, it was a gamble with everything at stake. "Sir, we are receiving clearance to dock," Captain Renner announced over the intercom. "Proceeding to high orbit." Cole inhaled sharply, the weight of humanity's future pressing on his shoulders. The hegemony had crushed countless civilizations before them, and now Earth's fledgling interstellar empire stood at the precipice of either peace or annihilation. The Unity's Hope was escorted down through Zephyr Prime's atmosphere by a phalanx of black-hulled destroyers, each one bristling with weapons that could erase entire fleets. The power dynamic was clear. Humanity was an insect before a titan. Cole and his delegation were led into the Grand Citadel, a massive structure carved from obsidian and reinforced with an energy field that distorted the air around it. The walls, whispered with alien technology, resonating in a way that made human minds uneasy. At the heart of the throne chamber stood Supreme Chancellor Varix Vorn. He was taller than any human, his form encased in a shimmering exoskeletal armor laced with pulsating veins of emerald energy. His elongated skull bore a crown of integrated neural spires, and his deep-set eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. The delegation of hegemony officials stood motionless, their insectoid and reptilian features betraying no emotion. Cole stepped forward, his voice steady despite the unnatural gravity in the chamber. "Supreme Chancellor, I come on behalf of the United Terran Federation to discuss a path to peaceful coexistence." Vorn regarded him as one might study an ant crawling across a boot. "Peace." His voice was a slow, deliberate echo through the chamber. "An inefficient construct of lesser beings." Cole remained firm. "We seek to avoid conflict. Humanity has no interest in war." Vorn's lip curled. "And yet, you have claimed worlds, expanded beyond your rightful domain. Do you believe your kind possesses the strength to dictate terms?" Cole took a measured breath. "We do not seek to dictate, only to coexist." Vorn tilted his head. "A fascinating contradiction. You speak of peace, yet your kind clings to survival like vermin." Cole knew the hegemony ruled by force alone, and yet he had to try. "We are prepared to negotiate terms that—" Vorn raised a single hand. Two guards stepped forward, massive hulking figures clad in obsidian armor. Without hesitation, they seized Cole. Gasps erupted from the human delegation, and Captain Renner's hand twitched toward his sidearm. The hegemony guards were faster. A surge of energy erupted from their armor, and Renner collapsed, his body twitching in the throes of an electromagnetic seizure. Cole struggled. "This is an act of war!" Vorn's amusement deepened. "War was inevitable the moment your species defied the natural order." He turned to the towering chamber doors as they slid open, revealing a raised platform, an execution dais. "No." One of Cole's aides lunged forward, but was cut down by a lance of plasma before he could take another step. Cole's stomach twisted, but he refused to show fear. "You won't stop humanity from fighting back." Vorn stepped closer, his towering form casting a long shadow. "There will be no fight, there will be extermination." The diplomatic cruiser, Unity's Hope, drifted through the void, its sleek hull reflecting the distant glow of a dying star. Ambassador Everett Cole stood in the main observation deck, his gaze fixed on the growing silhouette of Zephyr Prime, the capital world of the sovereign hegemony. It loomed like an obsidian monolith, its vast urban sprawl woven with rivers of molten metal and towering spires of black alloy. He adjusted his ceremonial sash, a deep blue symbol of the United Terran Federation's pursuit of peace. The mission was simple in theory: extend an olive branch to the hegemony, seek a diplomatic path forward. But in reality, it was a gamble with everything at stake. "Sir, we are receiving clearance to dock," Captain Renner announced over the intercom. "Proceeding to high orbit." Cole inhaled sharply, the weight of humanity's future pressing on his shoulders. The hegemony had crushed countless civilizations before them, and now Earth's fledgling interstellar empire stood at the precipice of either peace or annihilation. The Unity's hope was escorted down through Zephyr Prime's atmosphere by a phalanx of black-hulled destroyers, each one bristling with weapons that could erase entire fleets. The power dynamic was clear. Humanity was an insect before a titan. Cole and his delegation were led into the Grand Citadel, a massive structure carved from obsidian and reinforced with an energy field that distorted the air around it. The walls, whispered with alien technology, resonating in a way that made human minds uneasy. At the heart of the throne chamber stood Supreme Chancellor Varix Vorn. He was taller than any human, his form encased in a shimmering exoskeletal armor laced with pulsating veins of emerald energy. His elongated skull bore a crown of integrated neural spires, and his deep-set eyes gleamed with predatory amusement. The delegation of hegemony officials stood motionless, their insectoid and reptilian features betraying no emotion. Cole stepped forward, his voice steady despite the unnatural gravity in the chamber. "Supreme Chancellor, I come on behalf of the United Terran Federation to discuss a path to peaceful coexistence." Vorn regarded him as one might study an ant crawling across a boot. "Peace." His voice was a slow, deliberate echo through the chamber. "An inefficient construct of lesser beings." Cole remained firm. "We seek to avoid conflict. Humanity has no interest in war." Vorn's lip curled. "And yet, you have claimed worlds, expanded beyond your rightful domain. Do you believe your kind possesses the strength to dictate terms?" Cole took a measured breath. "We do not seek to dictate, only to coexist." Vorn tilted his head. "A fascinating contradiction. You speak of peace, yet your kind clings to survival like vermin." Cole knew the hegemony ruled by force alone, and yet he had to try. "We are prepared to negotiate terms that—" Vorn raised a single hand. Two guards stepped forward, massive hulking figures clad in obsidian armor. Without hesitation, they seized Cole. Gasps erupted from the human delegation, and Captain Renner's hand twitched toward his sidearm. The hegemony guards were faster. A surge of energy erupted from their armor, and Renner collapsed, his body twitching in the throes of an electromagnetic seizure. Cole struggled. "This is an act of war!" Vorn's amusement deepened. "War was inevitable the moment your species defied the natural order." He turned to the towering chamber doors as they slid open, revealing a raised platform, an execution dais. "No." One of Cole's aides lunged forward, but was cut down by a lance of plasma before he could take another step. Cole's stomach twisted, but he refused to show fear. "You won't stop humanity from fighting back." Vorn stepped closer, his towering form casting a long shadow. "There will be no fight. There will be extermination." The command deck of Vanguard Station thrummed with a tense energy, a storm of activity as officers moved between hollow terminals and tactical displays. Fleet Admiral Elias Carter stood at the center of it all, staring at a slowly rotating three-dimensional projection of the sovereign hegemony's territory. The red lines marking enemy borders seemed to expand like a spreading infection, a grim reminder of the Empire's unrelenting hunger. The room was filled with the highest-ranking officers of the United Terran Federation. Seated in a crescent formation were generals, admirals, intelligence operatives, and key political figures. At the far end, a massive central war table glowed with updated battle simulations, shifting probabilities, and projected outcomes. None of them looked favorable. Minister Levain, head of UTF's diplomatic corps, rubbed her temples. "This is madness," she muttered, more to herself than anyone else. "A full-scale war against the hegemony? Do you know what that means?" Carter's stare didn't waver. "I know exactly what it means." Across the table, Fleet Marshal Armin Cade leaned forward, his massive hands clasped together. "Then you know we can't win this. Their fleet outnumbers us 20-1. Their ground forces are genetically engineered for war, and their logistics network spans half the known galaxy. You're asking us to fight a goddamn hurricane with a candle." Carter exhaled slowly. "We're not going to fight them head-on. We'll never match them in sheer firepower." He tapped the hollow table, zooming in on the border sectors where the hegemony's supply lines ran like thick veins of trade and military movement. "What we can do is cut them open from the inside, strike where they don't expect it. Sabotage, precision attacks, guerrilla warfare." Commander Damian Rook, leader of Omega Team, leaned against the far wall, his arms crossed. His cybernetic eye flickered as it scanned the projected data. "That means sending operatives deep into enemy space," he said, his voice calm but edged with steel. "The risk is astronomical." Carter nodded. "So is the alternative." A murmur rippled through the room. Minister Levain let out a bitter laugh. "And what? You think the hegemony will just collapse because we poke a few holes in their war? Machine, that's wishful thinking." Carter's jaw tightened. "I think we make them bleed. We don't need to destroy them outright. We just need to hurt them badly enough that they can't keep this war going at full strength." Silence followed. The enormity of the task settled over the council like a suffocating weight. Cade was the first to break it. He exhaled through his nose, then leaned back in his chair. "You've already got something planned." Carter didn't hesitate. Outpost Vega. A new section of the hollow map lit up, displaying a strategic star system at the fringe of hegemony-controlled space. Outpost Vega was one of the primary resupply points for the hegemony's forward assault fleets, an unassuming orbital facility surrounded by a dense asteroid field, serving as a critical hub for weapons shipments and fuel processing. "If we take this out," Carter continued, "we put a dent in their war effort, a deep one." Cade studied the data. "You're talking about hitting a fortified hegemony installation. That's not a small job. That's why we're sending Omega Team." Carter turned toward Rook. "They'll infiltrate the outpost, plant charges at key structural points, and detonate the entire facility. No supplies, no forward momentum for their invasion fleets." Rook didn't hesitate. "When do we leave?" Carter looked him in the eye. "You're already behind schedule." The Phantom Lance was a Black Ops stealth corvette, its matte black hull designed to absorb scans and distort sensor readings. As it drifted through the asteroid belt surrounding Outpost Vega, Damian Rook stood in the dimly lit deployment bay, triple-checking his weapons and gear. His team, Omega Team, consisted of 6 operatives, each one a specialist. Lieutenant Darius Voss, the team's strategist, was seated at a tactical station, his fingers flying over a datapad as he studied the outpost's security feeds. Next to him, Sergeant Iko Wren, demolition expert, methodically armed the explosive charges they would be using to bring the station down. Across the bay, sniper and reconnaissance specialist Gage Lauren adjusted his scope, while medic and field engineer Tessa Valtz checked their infiltration suits for micro-tiers. The final member of the team, heavy weapons expert Jace Bear, Mala, silently loaded a belt of armor-piercing rounds into his rotary cannon. Rook spoke, his voice a low rumble over the comms. "We go in fast and quiet, no alarms. We plant the charges, get out, and leave them with a very expensive mess." Voss glanced up from his screen. "Their security is light, but there's a reinforcement fleet stationed a few light years away. We trip an alarm, we'll have a full battle group on us in minutes. Then we don't trip an alarm," Rook said simply. Iko grinned. "Simple. No pressure. The Phantom Lance maneuvered into position, using the cover of the asteroid field, to get within docking range of the station's maintenance shaft. The outer hull of Outpost Vega was a labyrinth of reinforced plating and service tunnels, its skeletal structure built to withstand heavy assault. Rook and his team exited the Corvette in zero gravity, their mag boots locking onto the hull as they made their way toward an unguarded access port. Voss worked quickly, bypassing the security lock with a hacking module. The door hissed open. They slipped inside. The interior of the station was eerily quiet. Cold metal corridors stretched ahead of them, illuminated by intermittent red emergency lights. The facility was only lightly staffed, a skeleton crew maintaining operations. They moved like shadows. Rook raised a fist. The team stopped. He gestured toward a security checkpoint up ahead. 2 hegemony sentries stood guard, their sleek armor glinting under the dim lights. Gage Loran raised his silenced rifle. 2 quiet pops. The sentries crumpled. They advanced. Aiko set the first charge at a structural joint where the outpost's primary fuel lines converged. If it detonated, the chain reaction would tear through the station's entire core. Voss tapped into a control terminal. "We've got 5 minutes. Before their system recognizes the intrusion, then we move," Rook ordered. The team split up, planting charges at critical junctions. They worked fast, each moment bringing them closer to detection. Then everything went wrong. An automated drone drifted into the hallway. Its scanner flickered red. It had spotted them. "Shit!" Voss cursed. Alarms blared. Rook clicked his comm. "We're compromised. Double time." Aiko planted her last charge and ran. Heavy footfalls echoed through the corridors as hegemony troops mobilized. The sound of magnetic rifles being primed filled the air. The station shook. "Contact!" Jace roared, unleashing a burst from his rotary cannon. The corridor filled with fire. They sprinted toward the extraction point as enemy forces swarmed the station. Plasma bolts scorched the walls around them. Gage took down a pursuing soldier with a headshot, while Tessa dragged Voss behind cover after he was grazed. "We're clear!" Aiko shouted as the last charge was set. Rook slammed his fist against his comm. "Detonate!" A shockwave rippled through the station. Metal shrieked. Explosions rippled through the infrastructure as the team dove into the airlock. The Phantom Lance pulled away as the entire station began to collapse in on itself. Omega Team had struck the first blow, but the war had only begun. The wreckage of Outpost Vega drifted through the void, its smoldering remains a stark contrast against the infinite blackness of space. The destruction of the hegemony supply hub had sent shockwaves through the enemy's war machine, slowing their invasion fleets, disrupting their logistics, and most importantly, forcing them to acknowledge that humanity was not an insignificant nuisance. They were a threat. On board the Vanguard station, Fleet Admiral Elias Carter stood in the war room, surrounded by a sea of holographic projections detailing the aftermath. Reports streamed in from encrypted channels, supply chains fractured, key battle groups delayed, and most significantly, the hegemony had been forced to reallocate forces to defend other critical infrastructure. Across the war table, Fleet Marshal Armin Cade reviewed the data with sharp eyes. "Vega's destruction is making ripples, but they're adapting. We bought ourselves time, but it's not enough." Carter nodded. "It was never going to be enough, but it forces them to be reactive instead of dictating the pace of this war." Minister Levain, ever the voice of cautious diplomacy, leaned forward. "And what happens when they decide that retaliation is more important than strategy? What if they make an example of one of our colonies?" "They already made an example of Cole," Carter said coldly. "We've already seen what they're willing to do." Levain exhaled sharply but said nothing. Cade turned back to the map. "The hegemony will tighten security around every installation now. We won't get another Vega." Carter tapped the display, zooming into a new set of coordinates. "Then we don't go after installations. We go after their command." The room went silent. Levain frowned. "You're suggesting assassinating one of their high-ranking officials?" Carter nodded. "Not just any official. Supreme Chancellor Varix Vorn's right hand, Grand Strategist Zalzir. Cade let out a low whistle. That's a hell of a target. Zalzir's the reason their war machine moves as efficiently as it does. He's the architect of their invasions. And he's human, Carter added. That sent a ripple of shock through the room. Voss, who had been listening from the sidelines, furrowed his brow. What? Carter switched the holo display to a classified intelligence file. The image of a man appeared, older, with sharp features, dark hair streaked with gray and piercing green eyes. He was clad in the elaborate regalia of the hegemony's military elite, Dr. Adrian Zalzir, Carter continued. Born on Earth, former UTF strategist. He defected to the hegemony 15 years ago. The silence deepened. Levain was the first to recover. Why? No one knows, Carter said. But he's the key to their operations. Take him out, and we throw their entire military structure into disarray. Cade crossed his arms. Where is he? Carter zoomed in on a planetary system near the galactic core. Chorus Prime, Hegemony Military Headquarters. If Vega was a fortress, Chorus Prime is a goddamn citadel. Voss shook his head. That's a suicide mission. Carter looked at Rook. Omega Team will handle it. Rook didn't blink. Then, we'll get it done. The Phantom Lance emerged from slipspace just beyond the gravitational pull of Chorus Prime, its stealth systems engaged as it slipped through the dense asteroid field encircling the planet. Below, the world stretched like an iron wound, a sprawling industrial metropolis, its skyline dominated by monolithic spires of black metal, its surface choked by the smog of 1,000,000 war factories. Inside the Corvette's deployment bay, Omega, team made their final preparations. Rook stood at the center, eyes scanning the holographic map of the city's defenses. We have one shot at this. Chorus Prime is too well fortified for a prolonged engagement. We get in, eliminate Zalzir, and get out before the hegemony even knows we're there. Voss adjusted his combat visor. Infiltration is going to be a nightmare. The entire city is crawling with patrols. Aiko, crouched over a case of explosives, smirked. That's why we're going through the underground transit systems. Tessa Valtz, their medic and field engineer, checked her tablet. The maglev tunnels run directly beneath the central command tower. If we breach the security gates, we can move undetected until we're right under Zalzir's office. Rook nodded. Then that's the plan. Silent, surgical, and no unnecessary engagements. Bear chambered around in his heavy rifle. And if it gets loud, Rook smirked, then we do what we do best. The ship maneuvered into position above the city, using the thick smog and factory exhaust vents as cover. Omega Team deployed via drop pods, the air around them screaming as they plummeted toward the surface. The pods smashed into an abandoned maintenance sector beneath the city, hydraulic dampeners absorbing the impact. The team moved quickly, sealing their entry points and activating their cloaking devices. The tunnels were dark, illuminated only by the occasional flicker of emergency lights. Distant echoes of machinery vibrated through the walls. They moved in formation, silent as ghosts. As they neared the security checkpoint leading to the command sector, Voss hacked the access panel. The heavy blast doors slid open with a hiss. Beyond them, rows of patrolling hegemony enforcers stood watch. Rook signaled. Loran raised his rifle. 2 shots, 2 sentries dropped. The team slipped past, undetected. They navigated the underground tunnels until they reached the command spire. A narrow maintenance shaft ran all the way up to the top floors. They climbed. Minutes stretched into an eternity as they ascended, every sound magnified in the tight confines. At the top, they breached a side access panel, emerging into a grand corridor lined with towering statues of hegemony warlords. Zalzir's office was ahead. They moved. Rook reached the door, hacking the controls. Inside, Adrian Zalzir stood at a massive window, hands clasped behind his back, staring at the city below. He turned as they entered, his expression calm. I was wondering when you'd come. Omega Team, raised their weapons. Zalzir smiled, and then the alarms blared. Steel shutters slammed down over the windows, locking the room in. "You think I wouldn't anticipate this?" Zalzir said, his voice eerily steady. Rook's instincts screamed. The floor beneath them electrified. A surge of energy coursed through their bodies. Darkness. Rook awoke, shackled to a reinforced chair in a cold interrogation chamber. His team was bound alongside him. Zalzir stood before them. "You underestimated me," he said, his voice almost amused. Rook spat blood. "Go to hell." Zalzir leaned in. "Humanity's resistance is a fool's errand. You cannot win." Rook smirked through the pain. "Watch us," Zalzir sighed. "I could have been your greatest asset. Instead, you forced my hand." He turned toward the security officers. "Execute them." The guards raised their weapons. Rook braced himself. Then, an explosion rocked the facility. The room trembled. Zalzir's expression darkened. "What?" The door blasted open. Fleet Admiral Carter strode in, flanked by UTF strike teams. Rook grinned. "Guess you underestimated us." The explosion sent tremors through the command spire, the reinforced walls groaning under the sudden shockwave. Smoke poured in from the blasted doorway as Fleet Admiral Elias Carter stepped into the chamber, his sidearm raised, flanked by heavily armored UTF strike teams. "Take them down!" he barked. The room erupted into chaos. Hegemony enforcers scrambled for cover, their plasma rifles charging as they attempted to regroup. Carter's strike teams moved with ruthless efficiency, laying down suppressing fire while breaching the room in a coordinated assault. Zalzir's personal guards fell within seconds, their armor proving ineffective against high-velocity rounds designed to pierce through hegemony plating. Commander Damian Rook, still bound to the interrogation chair, twisted his wrists. His restraints were made from reinforced alloy, but the system's locking mechanism had been damaged by the explosion. He wrenched his arms free just as a hegemony enforcer lunged at him. With a brutal headbutt, Rook knocked the soldier off balance. He twisted, driving an elbow into the guard's throat, and yanked the sidearm from his belt. Without hesitation, he fired. One shot, center mass. Zalzir was already moving. The former human strategist dove behind a reinforced console, tapping into the chamber's security grid. His calm expression never wavered, even as chaos erupted around him. Carter moved swiftly, tossing a combat knife toward Rook. "Time to move!" Rook caught it midair, cutting the restraints on his legs before turning to his team. Aiko, Voss, Gage, Tessa, and Bear were still shackled, but he worked quickly, slicing through their bindings as the battle raged on. "Loran, cover us!" Rook ordered. Gage Loran was already in position, his sniper rifle zeroed in. He fired once, clean, precise. A hegemony enforcer dropped mid-sprint, his weapon clattering to the ground. Tessa grabbed her gear, sliding behind cover to patch up. Voss's wounds. "We need to move now." Carter pressed forward, exchanging fire with a cluster of reinforcements flooding into the corridor. "We don't have much time. The entire damn city knows we're here." Zalzir suddenly rose from behind his cover, a smirk playing at his lips. "You think you're leaving Chorus Prime alive?" With a flick of his wrist, he activated a remote command. From outside the window, the sky darkened. A fleet of hegemony warships descended from high orbit, their weapon systems locking onto the command spire. Carter's comlink crackled. "Admiral!" A voice from the Vanguard station shouted. "Enemy reinforcements are closing in on your position. We're detecting planetary bombardment signatures." Carter clenched his jaw. "Damn it." Zalzir stepped forward, confident despite the carnage around him. "You could have left well enough alone," he said, his voice almost disappointed. "Humanity was given a chance to kneel and survive. Now you will burn." Rook's grip on his pistol tightened. "You talk too much," he fired. Zalzir anticipated. Yet the strategist twisted at the last second, the bullet grazing his shoulder instead of taking him down. He retaliated, drawing a compact energy blade from his waist. In one fluid motion, he lunged at Rook. The two men collided. Zalzir moved with the precision of a trained warrior, striking with ruthless efficiency. Rook barely dodged in time, twisting to avoid the blade as it sliced through the air. He countered with a brutal uppercut, catching Zalzir under the jaw. The strategist staggered, but did not fall. Rook pressed the advantage, throwing a follow-up strike. Zalzir blocked it, pivoting as he drove his knee into Rook's ribs. The force sent Rook stumbling back. The room around them was still a war zone. Carter and his strike teams fought desperately to hold off the hegemony reinforcements flooding in from every corridor. The structure itself groaned as orbital bombardment scorched the sky above, shaking the very foundations of the spire. Rook wiped blood from his lips, staring at Zalzir. "You're fast." Zalzir smiled. "You're predictable." The strategist lunged again. This time, Rook was ready. He feigned a sidestep but dropped low at the last second, sweeping Zalzir's legs out from under him. The hegemony strategist hit the ground, hard, his energy blade skidding across the floor. Rook didn't hesitate. He grabbed the fallen blade, flipped it in his grip, and drove it straight through Zalzir's chest. Zalzir gasped, his expression frozen in shock. Blood, dark and unnatural, trickled from his lips. He looked at Rook, as if trying to process what had just happened. Then he collapsed. The battle was still raging, but the tide had shifted. "Objective complete!" Carter shouted. "Fall back!" Omega Team moved as one, pushing through the remaining hegemony forces as they carved a path toward the extraction zone. Explosions rocked the spire as Carter activated his comlink. "Phantom Lance, we need immediate evac," the Corvette responded, already maneuvering through the city's anti-air defenses. The team sprinted through the burning corridors of the command spire, plasma fire streaking past them. Voss hacked into the security grid, shutting down the last wave of automated defenses. "Go, go, go!" The team burst onto the landing platform just as the Phantom Lance hovered into position. The boarding ramp lowered, the ship's turrets blasting away at incoming enemies. Bear turned, firing a last barrage of covering fire before jumping onto the ramp. "We're in!" As the last of the team boarded, Carter slammed his fist against the ramp's control panel. "Get us out of here!" The Corvette's engines roared as it ascended. Below them, Chorus Prime erupted into chaos. With Zalzir dead, the city's command structure fractured. Hegemony forces scrambled, disoriented, leaderless. As the Phantom Lance soared into orbit, Vanguard Station hailed them. "Admiral, mission success confirmed. Zalzir is down." Carter exhaled, nodding. "And the fallout?" "The hegemony." He's scrambling. They're moving forces away from the front lines to re-establish control. We just bought ourselves a fighting chance. Rook sat back against the bulkhead, catching his breath. Bear grinned. "Hell of a fight." Voss let out a tired chuckle. "And it's just beginning." Carter turned toward the viewport, watching as the fires of Chorus Prime raged below. The war wasn't over, but today humanity had struck a decisive blow, and for the first time since it began, they had hope.